I need some shame. A little shame will do you good. You've heard that song, right? I need a change. Change will do you good. That's what came to me this morning when I was thinking about how I wanted to put together this talk about shame. It's this core belief that shame is actually a motivator, an intrinsic motivator that's going to help people get things done. That if we pressure them, they'll do better in life. If I pressure myself, I'll go further. It starts at a really young age. It starts with our parents. It starts with this idea that, well, I don't want my kid to grow up to be XYZ. I want them to be a fully functioning member of society. I don't want them to run off with a prostitute or get kicked out of detention. Just all these different things, these moldings, these ways that we want our children to do better than us, essentially. Like, we want what's best for them. So that's the funny thing, is it's like it's coming from a good space, a good intention, right? Of like, I want what's best for my kids. The problem is, though, is that this is a conditioned behavior that's getting handed down from generation to generation, where the parents, the grandparents believe that shame is the thing that we have to use as the motivator to change the behavior of a child, so that they know where the boundaries are at, so they know right from wrong. But what it's not taken into account is that we come here with an internal moral compass. Like, we know it's not right to hurt somebody. Those are all learned behaviors that we learn from the environment that we grow up in. So we don't need shame to like pressure us and like make us think that, oh, I've got to do it this one way, otherwise it's not going to change. So these shame cycles, they'll carry out over and over and over again until we're willing to break them. And so really the simple solution for this is true love and compassion, to understand that when someone makes a mistake, that it's okay to make mistakes. Like, that's how we learn, that's how we grow. I'm actually going to share a couple of stories, funny enough, that actually came up right as I was walking up to do this talk. Number one, I was going to go outside with my son. We have this aerobie flying ring. It's like a frisbee that's hollow in the middle. It can fly even further. And so I'm in my head, I'm thinking, not really paying attention. And I walk out the door. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, my son, he's right behind me. He's just grabbing his hoodie. He's on his way out. I'm going to grab the flying ring. And without thinking, I leave the door open. And he comes out and he says, "Dad, you left the door open again." And I immediately knew what he meant. We have a couple of cats here, and we don't want them getting loose in the neighborhood. And so I knew, that I had made that mistake of leaving the door open. I forgot to close it. And that could have caused a real issue. The cats could have got loose. And he starts talking to me, and I said, "Luke," I said, I know, but let's still try to keep a positive attitude, and let's play, because we came out here to play, and I don't want, the finger pointing and the shaming to ensue about what should or shouldn't have happened, because we both knew that there needed to be a course correction in that habit, in that behavior. I need to pay more attention. And why does this play out? Well, as someone whose father, used shame to pressure me to try to, be a better person, which, again, I think he did that because he wanted me to just do better than him, do better in life. He's probably looking at his past mistakes in life with shame and guilt and the heaviness that we carry around because of that, feeling like we screwed up. And my son is doing this because, I would play into those patterns as well. We become, unless we're consciously aware of making changes, of just being like our fathers. So I've done that. I've done that to my son, unfortunately, where I have used shame as a motivator. And so as I've been witnessing it, I've been using more love and compassion as the antidote to not put that pressure on him, because for me, there's nothing that hurts my heart and causes grief more than seeing, an innocent child that's just learning and growing in this world, and they need that room to find themselves an adventure and make mistakes and learn their lessons. Nothing hurts worse than, that shame projection. So we've been sort of, I guess you could say, bleeding the brakes is a good way to put it. It's something that you have to do whenever you're replacing the brake fluid in a car, so that it knows like when to stop, like where the boundaries are at, so you don't hit and run into something. So it's kind of like where we've been putting on the brakes in life and actually causing joylessness or sorrow or sadness, because we're using pressure, we're using shame to try to be like, no, don't do this, there's a boundary, when it's like, you don't need to hit the brakes so hard like that. Sometimes you just have to trust the person driving, that they know to stop at a stoplight, that they know that there's a car ahead of them, that they know that they have to slow down when they're approaching an intersection, to know that it's best to give it a little bit of gas when you're getting onto an entrance ramp or getting off of an exit ramp on the highway, to flow with the curve. We intrinsically know this stuff, but what happens is, because of our shame, because of our conditioning, and this starts at a really early age, we get that pressure to tell us what is right and wrong. And so we start losing touch with just knowing how to flow through life, like what to do, what's good for us, what's not good for us, the right choices to make. And even if we do make that mistake, that's okay, because there's valuable lessons in that. We were outside and we were throwing this flying ring, and he threw it in a position that it got caught in the neighbor's yard, and not really easy to retrieve because of the way their fence is constructed out of wood. These planks of wood with the little peaks on top. So it's not like there's a gate that you can just go swing open and go in and get it. And we also had a little yellow wiffle ball bat. And he says, Dad, throw me the bat. I'll use it and I'll fish the flying ring out of their yard as he's standing outside the fence, and I'll pick it up from there. So I threw him the bat, and the bat actually went over into the other neighbor's yard right next to it. And he goes, oh my God, Dad. And I was like, it's okay, it's all right, we'll figure it out. And so what we noticed is that in him going to retrieve the wiffle ball bat, he realized that there was kind of this weak fence in the neighbor's yard to where he could actually slip through in between these two yards to get the wiffle ball bat. And in doing so, he was put in a position to where he could actually use the wiffle ball bat to get the aerobie flying ring out, whereas he couldn't have done that before from where he was standing. So perfect example of a perfect mistake, just like in this little example of like how on the surface mistakes can look like, oh fuck, we screwed up, shame, gotta use shame, gotta pound it in, don't do that again, you're worthless if you do this, you're doing something wrong, it's gonna cause this, it cause a delay in play, it cause a delay in schedule of timing. For a lot of people, this could play out in the business world of, oh, you made a mistake, like you cost us money, or, oh, I made a mistake, I didn't, sell very well to that client. And it's like, maybe that client wasn't supposed to work with you. Maybe you were just supposed to meet with that person to learn, a few things, so that going forward, you don't make those same mistakes for those clients that are right for you. So it works out so perfectly every time. So what's the opportunity cost, I guess, of shame? What happens? I'd say number one, because it is conditioned, because it is programming, we're basically looking at this idea that we have to be up here to know what's right and wrong. And so the chaos that we typically will feel inside, and also the chaos that we see out in the world that's reflective of ourselves, of the internal chaos that's going on through mirroring, is caused by the mind the heart, the body that knows these other faculties that are aware of what's right for a person, what's wrong for a person, they're fighting with one another. They're trying to get on the same page. It's like the child, before they're conditioned with shame, just knows what to explore and where to go to. And of course, again, we have to have boundaries. You can't let a 4-year-old grab a knife out of the drawer. We get that. But there's, sometimes we hit the brakes too hard, right? So the harder the brakes are being hit when we're growing up, the more it's being pounded into us about shame, or you made a mistake, or you're not good enough, which is the underlying message, or that you're stupid. Like, the harder this message gets pounded into us, the more that we're going to be in internal chaos between our hearts, our minds, the body. Okay? Because we intrinsically know here, but then the programming from our conditioning up here is saying something different. So this is the cause of mental health issues. This is the cause of overthinking, of indecision, of unhappiness, because this knows happiness. All of this here, the mind, is just designed to observe what is. But what we're mostly doing through this conditioned programming, through shame, is saying what's good and what's bad for us. So another example would be romantic relationships where, we go through a breakup. Say we're 17, we go through a breakup, we see something happen, and we didn't want it to. And so we feel shame, we feel guilt, like maybe we could have done something better, right? Piggybacking off of that earlier shame of pressure in life about you're not doing something right, you're not doing well enough, you need to fix this. That programming carries over to the romantic relationship life. And so you start looking at it like, okay, well, now I'm going to use this past indicator of where I messed up and where I wasn't good enough because of shame, and I'm going to apply that to all my future relationships so it doesn't happen again. And we're doing this with all of our shame programming. So what are we doing? We're not fully seeing the lesson that's present, that's available to us to help us learn and grow from. And we start limiting and narrowing the experience in life that we can have through this dualistic approach, through the mind of what's right and what's wrong for us. We start to think that, well, I can't date a person like this again, or I can't do that one thing again, or, I'll never, I fractured. This is an example for me to work through. It's like I fractured a tooth ice skating when I was younger, and it's like I was like, I'll never go ice skating again. But the truth was it was just I was being reckless and trying to show off a little bit when it was my first time ice skating, and my ego got the best of me as a kid, and I hurt myself. So the lesson was to not try to show off and be validated by people and try to get that approval. Whereas maybe I would enjoy ice skating. Maybe that would be a fun date idea in the future. So I'm limiting the scope of like what I can do in my life. So we're blocking the lesson, we're blocking life experience going forward because of all this stuff, right? So when you think about this, it comes down to this space of, can you let go of the weight? Can you let go of the shame? Can you look back on your past experiences with compassion, with non-judgment, with neutrality, to see that maybe the story that we told ourselves about what was wrong in that situation isn't true, and we need to see it from a different perspective. But when there's pressure grinding it in, that story is just going to stick there, and you can never really wash it off. It would be like trying to wash out the inside of a fireplace that that we've been burning materials in all our life. Every time a mistake happens, every time a lesson happens. So what we got to do, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is bring that compassion and non-judgment, because it's in that cleaner space in your mind, your body, where you're actually able to see things from a different perspective. Because what does compassion, non-judgment do? It takes away the duality of what was right and wrong, and it gives more of a full assessment from the top down to say what was maybe going on here. Hey, what was maybe going on here that I missed before? And when you do that, you start to kind of see where shame really has no basis in reality. We'll see it all the time, you know, the shame of, oh, this person did this, they should have done that. You know, parents that will help their kids out after they've made a mistake, but then they give them that lecture that's like full of shame, you know, and then they don't really learn to take care of themselves though, because they're just going around thinking like, okay, well, I'm gonna probably mess up anyway, and then mom and dad's gonna be there to clean it up. I don't know what the story is. They're fully for people. That could be a myriad of stories that we make up when shame is present, because shame says that we're not good enough. So we have to create a narrative based on the thesis of you're not good enough, of why that is. And that's awful, because it will hold us back financially, because the person that's in shame and feels like they're not good enough is not going to get promoted. They're not going to get the client. The person that regularly has feeling relationships, they're not going to last very long, because if the thesis is I'm not good enough, they will prove that right by that person leaving. If it's a health body thing, you know, where it's like my body, my health, if the thesis is it's not good enough, then that's always going to be the case. We're always going to find ways subconsciously to make these stories true. So we have to go back and say the thesis is that no matter what, under any circumstances, no matter what anybody is saying, no matter what's going on in my life, in my circumstances, or in my head of the conditioning, that I'm always enough, that I'm always worthy. And when you do that and you create that thesis, then you're going to start to see where the subconscious beliefs that are trying to back up this thesis that we, you know, deleted, it's in the recycle bin, and we just deleted it forever off the computer, boom, it's gone. Now we've got to see that, we will see that, and we'll be like, oh, okay, well, that's not congruent with this thesis, so I'm going to delete that story. And then we get to replace the stories too. And I don't even think that we have to do this in piecewise fashion, because trying to piece a story together instead of just letting it flow oftentimes creates a sense of discontinuity within the self. It's there's nothing more difficult for someone that doesn't really know what they're doing the first time to take apart the mind and to go, okay, well, there's all these circuits and wires. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix that. Maybe it's just best to get a new motherboard. Maybe it's just best to say, you know what? I'm just going to create this simple thesis in my life, this affirmation of I'm enough, and know that you don't have to keep rehashing those old beliefs, because with that thesis intact, you can let go of the past and you don't have to keep rehashing the stories. The only reason to ever go back and listen to a story anymore is to get the treasure of the lesson of where it was actually empowering and not disempowering. Once you know that piece, once you know that truth, there's no reason to keep going and rehashing that old story again, because it will just hold you back from fully moving forward in your life. It's where we'll get caught too much in the past instead of living for the future. So, blocking our desires is the natural thing that comes up whenever we have shame. Because again, this knows what it wants. This is trying to say otherwise. It will block your desires. It will create frustration because you're not feeling fulfilled and getting what you want. So that's causing complications in your career, your financial life, your relationships. It's tough to find your purpose in life too, because if we're not willing to go out and take action and explore the areas that we want to go explore, because it's like, oh no, what if that one thing happens again? What if I'm miserable? Then we'll just never know, and we'll just stay stuck in a cycle of shame over and over again. So desire's going to lead us to all the right things too. It's crazy because we live in a culture where intellectual capacity and understanding is glorified. You know, through the academia world, we make fun of people that are quote unquote stupid. At the same time, there's stories of people that get in their own way because they're too smart for their own good. And then there's people that are not as smart as them that are even more successful and even less talented because they don't think themselves into loops intellectually. They just go for it. They just do it. So I guess the question to ask yourself as you're sitting there listening to this is, where do things feel stuck in your life? Where does it feel like frozen tundra? You know, you can't shovel tundra, you can't de-ice tundra. How do you get to the bottom of what's there? Might even ask yourself the question, where do you feel insane in life, that you've been thinking the same things over and over again? Maybe it's time to just go explore those areas and kind of see what's there. You know, where do you feel vulnerable in life? Where do you feel like you can't make things happen over and over again because there's a sense of ineptitude that you feel in this area? And maybe that area is truly congruent to you, but you're just holding yourself back from going and getting it. Where do you feel disconnected with yourself? Where does that feel like in the body? You know, we just went through, well, technically we're still going through, as I'm filming this, but we went through this pandemic where we could feel really disconnected from people. And so if you feel it in your body that you feel disconnected from people, where do you need to go? What things do you need to do? What things have you not tried to go be among people? Because sure, there's the keyboard, but then there's also a world out there as well. So think about it. I love you all.